Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we are looking at what's honestly one of the most striking anomalies in all of human thought. It is literally a mystery hiding in plain sight, and it all revolves around just one single number, 7. From the ascetic monks out in the deserts of the Middle East to yogis meditating way up on the peaks of the Himalayas, ancient wisdom traditions that were completely independent of one another all point to the number 7 with just stunning consistency, and they place it at the absolute apex of spiritual transformation. The source material we're unpacking today suggests, well, this isn't just some random numerological coincidence. Instead, it puts forward this absolutely fascinating thesis, that these varied ancient texts are actually just different maps of the exact same hidden architecture of human reality. So, let me pose a bit of a mystery to you. How exactly did completely disconnected ancient civilizations, cultures separated by thousands of miles and thousands of years, manage to map the exact same interior topography without ever actually meeting? I mean, we're talking about the Kabbalist, the Hindu yogi, the Christian mystic, the Sufi master, and the Buddhist monk. According to the exhaustive research in our source document, every single one of them essentially drew a distinct map of the exact same mountain, and remarkably, every single one of them placed the ultimate summit precisely at the 7th gate. No way that's a coincidence, right? Okay, let's dive into this. When we actually cross-reference these maps side by side, a stunningly clear narrative arc emerges. Down at the base, whether it's the root chakra in Hinduism or the Kabbalistic Sefirot of survival, we always start with grounding in the physical world. And as we climb up that ladder, moving through the stages of deep internal conflict into a radical opening of the heart and onward through profound inner vision, we find something just incredible. Every single map culminates at the exact same point, stage 7, a state of pure, unadulterated union. And what happens at that 7th stage is so profoundly consistent. It always represents the exact same phenomenon. We're talking about the complete dissolution of the individual ego, or the separate self, just melting right into pure, unified awareness. In the Sufi tradition, this is called fana, which literally translates to annihilation in divine reality. In Hinduism, it's known as samadhi. In Buddhism, it's nirvana. You've got 4 distinctly separate historical traditions mapping one identical phenomenon, and one number. It points not just to a cool metaphor, but to a literal, verifiable state change in human consciousness. Section 1. The Twist. Decoding the Book of Revelation. Now, here's where the research takes a massive, paradigm-shifting twist. What happens when we apply this universal rule of 7 to one of the most controversial, terrifying, and honestly deeply misunderstood texts in human history, the Book of Revelation? Our source text suggests a profound paradigm shift here, brilliantly illustrating the contrast between 2 very different ways of reading it. On one side, you have the literalist reading, the one we've all seen in those big Hollywood blockbuster movies, interpreting Revelation as a terrifying doomsday prophecy. Physical destruction, a literal beast, global war, the whole shebang. But on the flip side, supported by early Christian mystics and comparative religion, is the consciousness reading. In this esoteric framework, the apocalypse isn't the physical end of the earth at all, it's the internal death of the ego. The beast isn't some political leader, it's the unawakened fear-based mind. And those 7 seals? They are simply the 7 stages of inner awakening. Take this famously ominous quote, for example. No one knows the day or hour. Traditionally, this is read as meaning only a divine creator knows the literal calendar date of the end of the physical world. But if we reframe this directly for you, putting it in the context of inner awakening, it takes on a much more immediate and deeply personal meaning. It means nobody, no teacher, no guru, no fancy app, and definitely no calendar, can predict the exact timing of your own personal internal transformation. That spontaneous awakening belongs to the deepest intelligence of existence itself. Now, what's really interesting here is the deeply debated number 144,000. In Revelation, 144,000 people are sealed or saved from destruction. Literalists often read this as a strict, exclusive head count, but the esoteric reading connects this directly to human anatomy. See, in the ancient Hindu tradition, the human body is said to contain 72,000 nadis, or subtle energy channels, on each side of the body. You put those together, and that totals exactly 144,000. So the sealing of the 144,000 in Revelation isn't some VIP guest list for heaven, it's an anatomical threshold. It vividly describes the complete activation of the energy channels in a fully awakened human body. It was always an internal map. Section 2. The Proof. Science meets mysticism. At this point, you might be wondering, okay, is this just a clever metaphorical crossover between a bunch of ancient texts? Well, actually, no. the source material pivots right here to hard, secular evidence, grounding these ancient mystical claims in modern empirical data. Let's look at the physical brain. Modern neuroscience has identified a localized system called the default mode network, or DMN. This network essentially acts as your brain's relentless, self-referential narrator. It's highly active when we daydream about the past or worry intensely about the future. It is literally the physical mechanism that constructs the feeling of being a separate, isolated self, which is precisely what the ancients simply referred to as the ego. So the absolutely crucial point is what happens when this specific brain network is suppressed. Groundbreaking research from major institutions like Imperial College London and Johns Hopkins on deep meditation and clinical psychedelics shows a really remarkable convergence. When the DMN shuts down, users consistently report the exact same profound experiences: an overwhelming sense of union, the total dissolution of the self, and a feeling that everything is deeply interconnected. This observable brainwave state perfectly mirrors the language of the ancient seventh gates. The neurological suppression of the ego is functionally identical to the Sufi fana, the Hindu samadhi, and that profound silence in heaven described at the dramatic opening of Revelation's seventh seal. Empirical science is literally finally catching up to the mystics. And we can actually see the sociological impact of this profound shift happening in real time. Recent Pew Research data highlights a massive trend. Just notice the divergence here. Institutional religion in the US is steadily declining, while the religiously unaffiliated knowns and those identifying as spiritual but not religious are rapidly rising. Section 3. The acceleration. Why awakening is speeding up. This brings us to a massive question. Why is this transformation happening right now? Why are we seeing this massive shift at this specific, seemingly chaotic moment in human history? Let's take a look at the historical timeline. For centuries, texts like the Book of Daniel literally commanded prophets to seal up the scroll until the time of the end. But look what happened in the mid-20th century. In 1945, the suppressed Gnostic texts of the Nag Hammadi library were found hidden in an Egyptian jar. Just 2 years later, in 1947, the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered in sealed clay jars. These ancient, mystical keys were literally unsealed and brought back into human awareness precisely as the modern world was dramatically reshaping itself. This coincided directly with the terrifying dawn of the atomic age and the founding of the United Nations. Today, the source argues we are experiencing an unprecedented acceleration, and it's driven by 4 highly verifiable catalysts. First, we have information convergence. For the first time in human history, anyone with a smartphone can access the entirety of global wisdom instantly. Combine that with collective trauma. Global crises act as a collective dark night of the soul, right? It's a psychological breaking point which historically precedes mass spiritual breakthroughs. Then add in the psychedelic renaissance, where clinical research is producing non-dual, ego-dissolving experiences at an industrial scale. And finally, we have mainstream meditation, bringing contemplative practices to tens of millions through everyday apps. The technological and psychological infrastructure for a mass, collective awakening has simply never been more primed than it is right now. Section 4. The apocalypse inside you. If these texts really are intricate maps of consciousness, and if the global conditions for this shift are indeed accelerating, well then this final synthesis changes everything about how we view the future. We need to critically look at the actual root of the word we've been taught to fear for millennia. In ancient Greek, the word is apokalyptein. It absolutely does not mean destruction. It doesn't mean the fiery end of the physical world. It literally translates to uncover or to reveal. The apocalypse was never meant to be a Hollywood disaster movie. It is the lifting of a veil. It's an uncovering of the profound truth that is already hiding inside you. And what exactly is being revealed? Consider this incredible drop-the-mic insight from the ancient Gospel of Thomas. When you make the two into one, and when you make the inner like the outer and the outer like the inner, then you will enter the kingdom. The ancient texts were always, from the very beginning, pointing toward the unification of your own fragmented consciousness. The kingdom isn't some physical golden city descending from outer space. It is the stilled, awakened mind. It was literally always about you. So I'm going to leave you with this final, pretty provocative thought. What if all the terrifying prophecies, all the horrific imagery of beasts and tribulations, all the endless talk of the end of the world is actually describing the end of the world as you currently perceive it? What if the apocalypse isn't a catastrophe that happens to the earth, but a breakthrough that happens to your ego? What if the end of the world is simply the beginning of your awakened mind? Thanks for checking out this explainer.
Keep questioning, keep seeking, and I highly encourage you to dive into the source material for yourself.